Urgent, Kazakhstan has delivered a blow to Putin's gut. Russian weapons are flowing into Ukraine. Astana has done what the Kremlin didn't even dare to imagine. The Ukrainian armed forces are rejoicing. A secret scheme has shocked the world, effectively cutting off Putin's oxygen. All this and more coming up next. Watch until the end. Ukraine Today, Rinat Aslanov, welcomes you with the latest updates. Kazakhstan has been suspected of an unexpected twist in the supply of Russian weapons to Ukraine. A former high-ranking Romanian official has spoken out about Astana's involvement in a grey scheme. The former head of Romania's National Guard for Environmental Protection has revealed a sensation. He was allegedly offered 10 million euros to support a deal for importing ammunition from Kazakhstan and reselling it to a European country so that the weapons would ultimately end up in Ukraine. According to him, he reported this fact to the criminal prosecution authorities and the National Anti-Corruption Agency.
Russian-type ammunition that would have been supplied to a European state. This country would have bought them as an inheritance from the SEF fund and resold them on the market in Ukraine because they are needed there.
At the same time, according to him, there was talk of another case as well. On open Romanian territory, the same organization was planning to set up a weapons and ammunition factory.
A significant part of their artillery is based on Russian-type ammunition. We are talking about government officials in this case, not just private individuals. They thought they had found a weak link, according to their information, on Romanian territory as a NATO member. And then they decided that this was an opportunity to bring in ammunition through Romania, repaint it to hide its origin, and resell it.
Against this backdrop, the president of Kazakhstan and the Russian dictator met in Moscow. However, the results are rather terse. Tokayev stated that he was glad to have the opportunity to exchange views in an informal setting and to share his observations with Putin. Astana's actions speak louder than any words. Kazakhstan is finally moving out from under the Kremlin's influence. The country is taking another bold anti-Russian step by blocking the transit of dual-use goods to Russia. Astana explains this as a desire to avoid secondary sanctions, but in reality it is a powerful signal to Moscow. Until recently, Kazakhstan remained a window for Russia to circumvent Western sanctions. It was precisely through Kazakh territory that tons of strategically important goods reached Russia. Electronics, industrial machines, microchips, components for drones and guidance systems, dual-use equipment, without which the Russian military-industrial complex simply cannot function. But now there's a sharp turn. Astana is cutting off the Kremlin's lifeline. According to media reports, Kazakh authorities have been exercising total control over all cargo headed toward Russia. At the border checkpoints, they are now inspecting literally every truck, from household appliances to microchips. The results were not long in coming. Huge lines have formed at the checkpoints with thousands of trucks stuck in them. Drivers complain about waiting for days, and logistics companies admit that shipments toward Russia are practically paralyzed. Experts note that this move by Kazakhstan is a blow to the Kremlin's shadow schemes, which allow Russia to bypass sanctions and replenish its stock of critically important electronics.
Kazakhstan has also reached out to the European Union when the President of France and the President of Germany visited us, saying that we are ready to adopt more modern methodologies if the EU is willing to share them in order to comply with the sanctions regime.
While Moscow is falling deeper under sanction pressure and losing European markets, Kazakhstan is gradually strengthening its position in the global energy sector. The country has reached a historic high in oil production, effectively replacing Russian supplies to the EU. Thus, Astana is gradually pushing Russia out of European supply chains. But misfortune never comes alone. At the most inconvenient moment for Russia, Kazakhstan cut off the flow of fuel and triggered a new chain of the gasoline crisis, which is already paralyzing regions. Occupied Crimea is also affected. More precisely, it is left without gasoline, gas, or diesel. The peninsula is in a fuel agony, kilometer-long lines, panic and despair. This has never happened before. The occupiers are sounding the alarm, but there are no solutions. Crimea is plunging into fuel chaos. It's not just Kazakhstan, but China as well. Xi Jinping is making concessions to Trump. Beijing is turning away from Putin. The Kremlin's deal of the century, secret negotiations, hidden agreements, and a possible global shift in the war. What is this? A new world order or a political knockout for the Kremlin? All the shocking details coming up.
A truce or the calm before the storm. China has announced the suspension of an additional 24% tariff on American goods. The relief will last for a year. At the same time, the basic 10% tariff, which was introduced in response to a similar tariff by Trump announced in April, remains in place.
The US is the largest market for goods, and China is the largest producer of goods. How does China make money? by supplying its products to the biggest markets. And as we've noted, the US is the main one.
The decision to renew the agreements was made after a meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, according to Reuters. Thanks to this, tariffs of up to 15% on certain types of agricultural products from the US have also been lifted.
From an economic point of view, China and the US can't really be, let's say, not exactly in different camps, but they can't be adversaries. In fact, they are in different camps since they're competing over which of them is the leading economy.
China's Ministry of Finance noted that starting March 4th, they will suspend all tariffs on soybeans and other US agricultural products, including corn, wheat, sorghum, and chicken. It was stated that the decision was made in accordance with the consensus reached during economic and trade consultations between China and the US.
Therefore, despite all the political ambitions and attempts to show that we can compete, that we will be leaders and so on, when it comes to the economy, based on China's economic interests, it needs the US.
The US and China have also agreed to establish direct communication between their armed forces. As stated by Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth, this will help prevent potential conflicts between the countries.
Another step China has taken towards the US is its refusal to import Russian oil. According to Bloomberg, major state-owned companies and smaller private enterprises in China have cancelled nearly half of their oil shipments from Russia after the US imposed sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil in October.
And when the question arises of whom China will choose, Russia or the US, you have to understand a simple thing. There is the US, and one of its states, the largest, is California. And California's economy is equal to 2 Russian economies. One state of the United States is like 2 economies of the Russian Federation. Naturally, for China, the US is much more important than Russia.
Putin absolutely does not want to let go of one of his few remaining partners, so he sent his prime minister with greetings to Beijing. As a result of the negotiations, the parties signed about 10 documents on cooperation in the fields of energy, space, and high technology.
Russia is of interest to China as a supplier of raw materials and goods, but Russia doesn't really have much choice except to sell everything to China. China understands that Russia depends on it and that Russia won't take any steps against it. And with America, it's interesting because that's a sales market.
According to Ukraine's Foreign Intelligence Service, Russia is sinking ever deeper into economic dependence on China. Raw material projects in the Far East and Siberia are turning the region into a resource base for China. Meanwhile, local communities are left out of the promised benefits.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism, and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
And
Yet another blow to the Kremlin. Azerbaijan has come to Ukraine's defense. Support with weapons and ammunition is becoming a reality. The Kremlin is losing an entire region, and this is only the beginning of a global collapse. All the details are coming up in the report.
Azerbaijan may lift the embargo on arms supplies to Ukraine and send its Soviet-era equipment to the front. Meanwhile, media reports have emerged that Azerbaijan is launching serial production of artillery ammunition for Ukraine.
Azerbaijan has accumulated quite a lot of weaponry, both from the Soviet era and the arms Azerbaijan purchased while preparing to deoccupy its territory. To say that there is a huge amount of weaponry there, especially considering the scale of our front and the way we wage war, would not be accurate. But for Azerbaijan, these numbers are quite substantial and impressive.
After the Russians shot down an Azerbaijani plane over Grozny and refused to admit responsibility for what they had done, Azerbaijan took up arms. President Aliyev publicly sided with Ukraine and called Russia an occupier.
I don't think this resonates with the Ukrainian people's determination to never accept occupation. That's the main piece of advice. That's what we did.
I think people in Azerbaijan remember very well who brought war to their land. Formerly, yes, it was Armenia, yes, the occupation of Nagorno-Karabakh, but it was the Russian Federation that provided us with full military, political, and financial support. And moreover, who controlled the occupied Nagorno-Karabakh through so-called peacekeepers? Well, the Russians.
At the SCO forum in Beijing, Aliyev shook Putin's hand very coldly and demonstratively refused to talk to him.
That was an unprecedented act against our people. We are not responsible for the deterioration of relations. We respond constructively and lawfully, but we will never tolerate any signs or manifestations of aggression or disrespect towards us. In
Russia, they didn't lag behind either and began to brutally crack down on members of the Azerbaijani diaspora. The security forces even killed 2 of them. Some of the victims had broken ribs.
There are those who suffered spinal and internal organ injuries. If Azerbaijan had not intervened, the number of victims could have been hundreds of times higher.
In Baku, several journalists from a pro-Russian publication were arrested, directly accused of having ties to the FSB and Russian intelligence. They were said to have been conducting agent-based intelligence activities on Azerbaijani territory in the interests of the Russian Federation. So in other words, this was a kind of asymmetric response.
But the real low blow was Azerbaijan and Armenia signing a peace agreement in the United States. They completely ignored Russia as a permanent partner and mediator. Russia's influence in the Caucasus is fading away.
Armenia and Azerbaijan commit to permanently cease hostilities, open up trade, establish transport links, diplomatic relations, and also to respect each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
The Russian Federation feels its position weakening, feels that it is essentially unable to influence Aliyev or Azerbaijan in any way. And we see that it has started shelling the gas infrastructure used by Azerbaijan already on the territory of Ukraine in the Odessa region.
Now, Russia has begun shelling Azerbaijani oil depots and gas distribution stations in Ukraine. So far, Azerbaijan is providing Ukraine exclusively with humanitarian aid, but things could change very quickly.
At the moment, we have provided humanitarian and financial aid totaling 40 million euros, and this assistance is ongoing. It is completely transparent and purely humanitarian in nature. We have implemented several social infrastructure projects in the city of Irpin and will continue to do so. You know that Ukrainian children regularly visit us as guests. We will do everything in our power to help.
According to insider information, there could be several hundred units there, not Smerch or Grad, but Smerch, I think around 80 or so. In fact, such a reinforcement with equipment in a specific section of the front could significantly strengthen our positions. Plus, let's put it this way, there are also hundreds of pieces of military equipment of Soviet origin, like the same APCs and IFVs, which would also be quite useful for Ukraine.
Given the ongoing attempts by the Russians to harm Azerbaijan, Azerbaijani weapons may soon appear on the Ukrainian front lines.
And what do you think about the latest developments? Share your opinion in the comments. Like this video and stay up to date with the main news. There's more to come.